The massive alien research vessel Theoretical Insight drifted silently through the debris field where the human battleship had made its final stand. Admiral Cathvar of the Zephyrian Scientific Council stood before the primary observation deck, his 6 eyes fixed on the dark hull of the human warship that floated motionless among the wreckage of what had once been the largest hegemony fleet ever assembled. 3 standard cycles had passed since the Battle of Kepler's Edge, where a single human vessel had somehow managed to destroy over 200 hegemony ships before finally succumbing to overwhelming numbers. The victory had cost the hegemony dearly, and now the Council demanded answers. How had one primitive ship from a species barely 2 centuries into space travel inflicted such devastating losses on the galaxy's most advanced military force? "Begin the approach sequence," Cathvar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades studying the military capabilities of lesser species. "I want full scans of every section before we board." Chief Science Officer Yilnath, a tall crystalline being whose species had mastered faster-than-light travel while humans were still discovering fire, activated the scanning arrays. "Initial readings are peculiar, Admiral. The ship's design parameters don't match any known engineering principles." The human battleship UES Defiant hung before them like a predator frozen in death. Unlike the elegant, curved designs favored by most galactic civilizations, the human vessel was angular and brutal in its construction. Its hull was scarred with blast marks and penetration wounds, yet somehow it had remained structurally intact through the entire engagement. "The humans call it the Defiant class," reported Lieutenant Commander Zexhai from the intelligence station. "According to our databases, it was classified as a heavy battleship, though its tonnage is significantly less than our standard dreadnoughts." Cathvar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Yet this single light vessel managed to eliminate the pride of Zirion, our most advanced super dreadnought. Something is fundamentally wrong with our understanding of human military technology. As the Theoretical Insight drew closer, the scanning arrays began revealing details that made the research team increasingly uncomfortable. The human ship's armor wasn't the standard energy-dispersive materials used by most civilizations. Instead, it appeared to be composed of layered metals and composite materials designed to absorb and redirect kinetic impacts. "Admiral," Yilnath said, his usually calm voice carrying a note of concern, "the ship's weapon systems are unlike anything in our tactical databases. The primary armaments appear to be projectile-based rather than energy weapons." "Projectile weapons?" Cathvar's eyes narrowed. "That's impossibly primitive. No civilization has used kinetic weapons in space combat for over 10,000 years. Yet the ballistic scoring on our fleet's wreckage suggests these primitive weapons were devastatingly effective," Yilnath replied. "The humans somehow managed to penetrate our energy shielding with what appears to be simple metal projectiles." The boarding shuttle scientific method detached from the research vessel and approached the human ship's main docking bay. The bay doors had been blasted open during the battle, creating a perfect entry point for the alien researchers. As the shuttle pilot guided them through the twisted metal, the team got their first close look at the interior of a human warship. The corridors were cramped by galactic standards, designed for beings roughly 2 meters in height rather than the 3 to 4 meter averages of most spacefaring species. The walls were lined with what appeared to be redundant systems and backup controls, suggesting a design philosophy that prioritized survival over efficiency. "The humans seem to have built their ships with the assumption that they would be damaged in combat," observed Dr. Felvar, the team's military analyst. "Every critical system has multiple backups, and the power routing can be manually rerouted through dozens of different pathways." They made their way toward the ship's command center, their portable lighting units illuminating corridors filled with emergency patches and jury-rig repairs. The human crew had clearly fought until the very end, trying to keep their ship operational as systems failed around them. The command bridge was a sobering sight. The bodies of the human crew still sat at their stations, having chosen to remain at their posts rather than abandon their duties. These beings were smaller and more fragile-looking than the Zephyrians had expected, yet they had somehow managed to inflict catastrophic losses on a force that outnumbered them hundreds to one. "The command interfaces are remarkably simple," noted systems specialist Koran as she examined the human control stations. "No neural interfaces, no quantum computational matrices. Everything is operated through manual controls and visual displays." Cathvar picked up what appeared to be a human datapad from the captain's chair. The device was crude by galactic standards, but, as their translation software parsed the information, his eyes widened in disbelief. "These readings can't be correct," he muttered. According to this data, the humans were operating their reactor at 130% of design specifications. No civilized species would risk such dangerous power levels. Dr. Felvar was examining the tactical displays. Admiral, you need to see this. The humans' battle strategy makes no logical sense. They deliberately positioned themselves to draw fire from the entire fleet, using their own ship as bait while they systematically eliminated our command vessels. Suicide tactics, Kethvar said dismissively. Primitive minds often resort to self-destruction when faced with superior opponents. But, it worked, Felvar replied quietly. They eliminated 67% of our fleet's command structure before we could adapt to their tactics. The remaining ships were left without coordinated leadership, making them vulnerable to the humans' unconventional assault patterns. The team spent the next several hours cataloging the human ship systems, and, with each discovery, their respect for these supposedly primitive beings grew. The humans had somehow managed to create weapons that could penetrate advanced energy shielding, armor that could withstand incredible punishment, and tactical systems that had outmaneuvered the galaxy's most sophisticated military minds. In the ship's armory, they found weapons that defied conventional understanding. The human railguns used electromagnetic fields to accelerate metal slugs to incredible velocities, creating projectiles that carried more kinetic energy than most civilizations' primary ship-to-ship weapons. The ammunition storage areas contained thousands of these simple metal rounds, each one capable of punching through the hull of a hegemony cruiser. The simplicity is what makes them so effective, Yilneth observed as he examined one of the railgun projectiles. Our defensive systems are designed to counter energy weapons and guided missiles. We never considered the possibility that someone would use unguided kinetic projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds. The power systems were equally impressive in their crude effectiveness. Where most civilizations used controlled fusion or exotic matter reactors, the humans had built what amounted to a barely contained stellar core. The reactor chamber showed signs of having been pushed far beyond safe operational limits, with backup cooling systems and emergency containment fields that had clearly been activated multiple times during the battle. They were willing to risk catastrophic reactor failure to maintain power to their weapons, Dr. Felvar noted with something approaching admiration. Most species would have shut down their weapons to prevent a core breach. In the crew quarters, they found personal belongings that provided insight into the minds of these remarkable beings. Photos of families, children's drawings, letters from home. These humans had known they were likely going to die, yet they had fought with a determination that bordered on the incomprehensible. The ship's medical bay told its own story of human tenacity. The emergency treatment log showed that crew members had continued fighting while suffering from injuries that would have incapacitated most galactic species. Burns, radiation exposure, decompression injuries, the humans had simply patched themselves up and returned to their duties. As the research team prepared to return to their own vessel, Kethvar found himself standing once again on the human bridge, looking at the captain's chair where the ship's commander had died at his post. The human had been small and fragile compared to a Zephyrian warrior, yet he had somehow orchestrated one of the most brilliant tactical victories in recorded history. "Admiral," Yilneth said softly, "what do we tell the council?" Kethvar considered the question carefully. The hegemony had always operated under the assumption that superior technology and numbers would guarantee victory against any primitive species. The humans had shattered that assumption completely. "We tell them the truth," he finally replied. "That we have underestimated this species in ways we are only beginning to understand. This ship represents more than just advanced technology, it represents a mindset that we may not be equipped to counter." As they departed the UES Defiant, leaving the human crew to their eternal watch, the research team carried with them data that would force the galactic community to completely re-evaluate their understanding of warfare itself. The humans had not won through superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They had won through sheer determination, tactical innovation, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for their beliefs. The implications of this discovery would soon spread throughout the galaxy, carrying with them a simple but terrifying truth: humanity was not the primitive species they had appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, an enemy that could not be defeated through conventional means, because they refused to accept defeat as a possibility. The emergency session of the Galactic Hegemony Council convened 3 days after Admiral Kethvar's preliminary report reached the capital world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the vast crystalline chamber, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators worked frantically to decode. High Chancellor Morgoth, a massive insectoid being whose species had dominated galactic politics for over 5 millennia, called the assembly to order with a resonant drone that silenced all other sounds. We have received disturbing reports from the Kepler's Edge investigation. Admiral Kefvar will present his findings. Kefvar's holographic projection materialized at the center of the chamber, his 6 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. Honored representatives, what we discovered aboard the human battleship challenges everything we thought we knew about this species and warfare itself. The three-dimensional display activated, showing detailed scans of the UES Defiant. Gasps and alarmed chittering erupted throughout the chamber as the delegates saw the crude yet devastatingly effective design of the human warship. The humans have developed weapons that bypass our most advanced defensive systems, Kefvar continued. Their railgun technology accelerates simple metal projectiles to velocities that make them more destructive than our plasma cannons. They have essentially weaponized physics itself. Senator Vexlane of the Etherian Consortium, whose species had perfected energy weapons millennia ago, interrupted with a dismissive flutter of his wing membranes. Surely you exaggerate, Admiral. Kinetic weapons are the domain of primitive civilizations. How could simple projectiles penetrate our shield matrices? The display shifted to show battle damage analysis from the destroyed hegemony vessels. The images were sobering, clean penetration holes through hulls that should have been impervious to physical attacks, with secondary damage from the kinetic energy transfer that had torn ships apart from the inside. Our shields are designed to deflect or absorb directed energy, Kefvar explained. They were never intended to stop solid objects moving at 20% of light speed. The humans appear to have studied our defensive systems and deliberately developed weapons that exploit their fundamental weaknesses. Dr. Yilnetha's projection joined the display, holding what appeared to be a simple metal cylinder. This is a standard human railgun projectile. Depleted uranium core, tungsten penetrator, no guidance systems, no explosive warhead. Yet this single round destroyed a hegemony heavy cruiser by punching through its reactor containment. The chamber erupted in concerned murmuring. The hegemony's military doctrine had remained essentially unchanged for thousands of years, based on the principle that energy weapons and defensive screens represented the pinnacle of space combat technology. The humans had shattered this paradigm with what amounted to advanced slingshots. Admiral Torbeck of the Military Strategic Council, a reptilian being whose species had conquered 17 star systems, leaned forward in his elevated seat. What of their defensive systems? Surely they must have some weakness we can exploit. The display showed cross-sections of the human ship's armor system. Their defensive philosophy is completely different from ours, Kefvar replied. Instead of energy shields, they rely on layered physical armor designed to absorb and distribute impact force. When our plasma cannons hit their hull, the energy was dispersed across multiple armor layers, significantly reducing the effective damage. Dr. Felvar's analysis appeared on the screen, showing comparative damage assessments. A hegemony ship of equivalent mass would have been destroyed by the first volley the humans absorbed. The Defiant took direct hits from over 40 capital ships and remained combat capable until the final moments of the battle. High Chancellor Morgetha's mandibles clicked ominously. You're telling us that this single human ship survived concentrated fire from our entire fleet? Not just survived, Kefvar corrected. They used the incoming fire to mask their own tactical movements. Our sensor readings show that they deliberately positioned themselves to draw maximum fire while using the resulting energy discharges to blind our targeting systems. The implications hit the chamber like a shockwave. The humans hadn't just defeated the hegemony fleet, they had turned the fleet's own firepower into a tactical advantage. It was a level of strategic thinking that bordered on the incomprehensible. Commander Zilkat of the Intelligence Division activated her own data stream. Our analysis of human military communications reveals even more disturbing patterns. This battle was not an isolated incident. The humans have been deliberately engaging hegemony forces in small-scale conflicts for the past 2 years, apparently to study our tactics and weapons. The display showed a chronological series of minor skirmishes between human scout ships and hegemony patrols. What had initially been dismissed as random encounters between exploration vessels now revealed themselves as carefully orchestrated intelligence-gathering operations. They let us win these early engagements, Commander Zilkat continued. Their ships would fight just long enough to observe our combat doctrine, then withdraw. We thought we were demonstrating our superiority. In reality, we were teaching them how to defeat us. Senator Quinera of the Peaceful Collective, whose species had avoided conflict for over 6 centuries, spoke with obvious distress. This suggests a level of military planning that spans years, possibly decades. These humans aren't just tactically innovative, they're strategic thinkers on a scale we haven't encountered. The most disturbing discovery came when Dr. Felvar revealed his analysis of human crew performance during the battle. The physiological readings we recovered from their medical systems show that the human crew was operating under extreme stress levels that would have incapacitated most known species. Yet their performance remained optimal throughout the engagement. Medical data streamed across the display, showing heart rates, neural activity, and hormone levels that painted a picture of beings pushed far beyond normal operational limits. Their adrenaline production increased by over 400% during combat, yet this seemed to enhance rather than impair their cognitive function. They appear to be evolved for high-stress environments. "You're suggesting these humans are natural warriors?" asked Admiral Torvek, his voice carrying a note of professional respect. "More than that," Dr. Felvar replied. "Their homeworld data indicates they evolved on a planet with gravity 1.3 times galactic standard, with an atmosphere that's 21% oxygen, far higher than most inhabited worlds. They come from what we would classify as a death world, yet they consider it normal." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Most galactic species had evolved on relatively peaceful worlds with stable climates and predictable environments. The humans had developed intelligence while surviving on a planet that would be considered hostile by galactic standards. High Chancellor Morgeth's voice carried a grim tone. "What are their current military capabilities?" Admiral Kethvar consulted his data streams. "Intelligence suggests they have approximately 200 ships of various classes scattered across their territory. Not all are as advanced as the Defiant, but if this vessel represents their standard battleship design..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. 200 ships built to human standards could potentially challenge the entire hegemony fleet, especially if they employed the same tactical innovations demonstrated at Kepler's Edge. "There's more," Commander Zilkat added quietly. "Our long-range sensors have detected massive industrial activity in human space. They appear to be constructing new shipyards at an unprecedented rate. Construction projects that would take us decades to complete are being finished in months." The display showed energy signatures from human space that indicated industrial capacity far beyond what their population should have been able to support. Either the humans were working with technology they hadn't revealed, or they possessed a work ethic and efficiency that dwarfed even the most productive galactic civilizations. Senator Kexhai of the Trade Federation raised a crystalline appendage. "What of diplomatic solutions? Perhaps we can negotiate with these humans, establish boundaries, avoid further conflict." Admiral Kethvar's expression was grim. "We intercepted human communications during and after the battle. Their reaction to destroying a fleet 10 times their size was not celebration or fear. It was regret that they had been forced to take lives, followed immediately by tactical analysis of how to improve their performance in future engagements. They see our entire fleet as a learning experience," Dr. Felvar added. "Their post-battle reports treat the engagement as a successful field test of their combat doctrine. They're already implementing improvements based on what they learned from fighting us." The chamber buzzed with alarmed communications as delegates conferred with their respective governments. The humans weren't just a military threat, they were an evolving one, becoming more dangerous with each encounter. High Chancellor Morgeth called for order. "We need options. Military recommendations." Admiral Torvek stood, his massive frame dominating his section of the chamber. "A preemptive strike while we still maintain numerical superiority. If we commit our entire military force, not just one fleet, but every vessel we can muster, we might be able to overwhelm them before they can fully deploy their new technologies." "And if we fail?" asked Senator Vexlane. The silence that followed was answer enough. If a coordinated assault by the entire hegemony military failed, there would be no second chance. As the council session continued into the night cycle, one fact became increasingly clear to every delegate present: the galaxy had encountered something unprecedented. The humans represented not just a military threat, but a fundamental challenge to the established order. They fought with weapons that shouldn't work, employed tactics that violated conventional wisdom, and possessed a mindset that treated impossible odds as merely another problem to solve. The most terrifying aspect wasn't their technology or their tactics, it was their attitude. They approached warfare the same way they apparently approached every challenge, with methodical analysis, innovative solutions, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. For a galactic community that had grown comfortable with predictable conflicts and established hierarchies, the humans represented something genuinely alien. They were a species that thrived on adversity, improved under pressure, and viewed overwhelming opposition not as a reason to surrender, but as motivation to become something greater than they had been before. 6 months after the Council session, the worst fears of the galactic hegemony began to manifest across the Outer Rim territories. Human ships, previously confined to their small corner of the galaxy, began appearing in systems that should have been impossible for them to reach. But these weren't the primitive exploration vessels the galaxy had grown accustomed to encountering. Admiral Cathbar stood on the bridge of the research vessel Theoretical Insight, now retrofitted as a military command ship, watching as his sensors detected the approach of a human fleet unlike anything in their previous intelligence reports. The lead ship alone was twice the size of the UES Defiant, and the energy readings coming from its hull suggested technological capabilities that surpassed even optimistic projections of human advancement. "How many vessels?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. 47 ships confirmed, Admiral, reported sensor operator Yilquan. The largest appears to be what humans classify as a dreadnought. Mass readings indicate approximately 12 million tons displacement. Cathbar's 6 eyes narrowed. The hegemony's largest ships barely reached 8 million tons, yet the humans had somehow constructed vessels that dwarfed even their most ambitious engineering projects. Time to weapons range? At current approach speed, approximately 18 minutes, sir. The Admiral opened a communication channel to the assembled hegemony defensive fleet. 300 ships from 17 different species, representing the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. It should have been overkill. The humans were still outnumbered more than 6 to 1. Yet every officer on every ship remembered the reports from Kepler's Edge, where a single human battleship had destroyed 200 hegemony vessels. The mathematics of their current situation were uncomfortably similar. "All ships, this is Admiral Cathbar," he broadcast. "Execute tactical formation Sierra 9. Maintain maximum defensive spacing and prepare for unconventional assault patterns." The human fleet continued its steady approach, their ships moving with a precision that spoke of advanced coordination protocols. Unlike the chaotic swarms favored by most galactic militaries, the humans maintained perfect geometric formations that seemed to shift and adapt in real time to the hegemony's defensive positioning. "Admiral," communications officer Zexai called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel." "Put it through." The main display activated, revealing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She was smaller than most galactic species, with pale skin and dark hair, but her eyes carried an intensity that made Cathbar instinctively step back from the screen. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," the human said, her voice carrying across the bridge with mechanical precision. "You are currently in violation of the Kepler Accords, which established this system as neutral territory following the unprovoked attack on our colony vessels." Cathbar's mandibles clicked in confusion. "There are no Kepler Accords. No such treaty was ever negotiated." Admiral Chan's expression didn't change. "The accords were ratified by 43 independent systems following the hegemony's failure to respond to diplomatic overtures after the Battle of Kepler's Edge. Your government's silence was interpreted as acceptance of the new territorial boundaries." "That's impossible," Cathbar protested. "The Hegemony Council would never recognize human territorial claims." "Nevertheless," Chen continued, "you are currently in violation of interstellar law as recognized by the majority of local star systems. You have 2 options, withdraw immediately, or be forcibly removed." The transmission ended, leaving Cathbar staring at a blank screen. The implications hit him like a physical blow. While the hegemony had been debating how to handle the human threat, the humans had been establishing diplomatic relationships with independent systems throughout the sector. "Sir," Intelligence Officer Morkan reported, "our databases show no record of any diplomatic contacts between humans and local systems." "Because we weren't monitoring for them," Cathbar realized. "We assumed no civilized species would ally with primitives. We never considered that the humans might be actively building a coalition." The tactical display updated as the human fleet continued its approach. Their ships were now close enough for detailed scans, and the results were deeply disturbing. The human vessels were equipped with weapons that didn't match any known technology in galactic databases, and their defensive systems appeared to incorporate lessons learned from studying hegemony combat doctrine. "Admiral," Tactical Officer Quinseth reported, "the human ships are charging weapons systems, but the energy signatures don't match their previous railgun technology. These appear to be directed energy weapons of unknown design." Cathbar's heart sank. The humans had not only improved their kinetic weapons, but they had also developed energy systems that could potentially counter the hegemony's adaptive defensive measures. All ships, prepare for engagement, he ordered. Target the largest vessels first and maintain. His orders were cut off as space around the hegemony fleet suddenly erupted in brilliant flashes of coherent energy. The human weapons weren't just directed energy beams, they were some form of plasma projection system that created expanding spheres of superheated matter that engulfed multiple targets simultaneously. 3 hegemony cruisers simply vanished in the first volley, their hulls instantly vaporized by temperatures that exceeded the surface of most stars. The defensive formation that had taken hours to perfect dissolved into chaos as ships desperately tried to avoid the expanding plasma fields. Return fire, Kethvar ordered, but the response was scattered and ineffective. The human ships were employing tactical movements that defied conventional space combat doctrine, using three-dimensional maneuvers that made targeting nearly impossible. The lead human dreadnought demonstrated capabilities that bordered on the impossible, accelerating and changing direction at rates that should have crushed any biological crew. Either the humans had developed artificial gravity systems far superior to anything the galaxy had seen, or their crews were capable of surviving forces that would be lethal to most known species. "Sir," sensor operator Yilquan called out, his voice filled with disbelief, "the human ships are coordinating their movements with a precision that suggests quantum entanglement communication. Their tactical responses are occurring faster than lightspeed communications would allow." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 20 minutes. The human fleet systematically dismantled the hegemony forces with an efficiency that was both terrifying and beautiful to observe. Their weapons were precisely targeted to disable rather than destroy, leaving most hegemony ships adrift but intact. When the firing stopped, 273 hegemony vessels floated helplessly in space, their weapons disabled and their engines offline. The humans had achieved total victory while suffering no apparent casualties. Admiral Chan's image reappeared on the main display. "Admiral Kethvar, your fleet is disabled but salvageable. We are transmitting repair protocols and safe passage coordinates. You are free to leave this system and return to hegemony space." "Why?" Kethvar asked, genuinely confused. "Why not destroy us? We came here to eliminate your species." Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because unnecessary death serves no purpose. Our conflict with the hegemony was never about conquest or destruction. It was about recognition and respect. Today's engagement has established both." The human admiral gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical display showed human rescue ships approaching disabled hegemony vessels. "Your crews will receive medical attention and humanitarian aid. Any vessel requiring emergency repairs will be assisted regardless of previous hostilities." Kethvar found himself speechless. The humans had just demonstrated military superiority that rendered the entire hegemony fleet obsolete, then immediately offered aid to their defeated enemies. It was a combination of overwhelming force and unexpected mercy that violated every assumption about primitive species. "There is one final matter," Admiral Chen continued. "The Hegemony Council will need to send diplomatic representatives to Kepler Station within 30 standard days. The galactic community requires new agreements regarding territorial boundaries, trade relationships, and mutual defense protocols." "You're dictating terms to the entire galaxy," Kethvar said, though there was no anger in his voice, only amazement. "We're offering partnership," Chen corrected. "The galaxy faces threats that no single species can handle alone. Recent deep space surveys have detected anomalous signals from the galactic core that suggest the presence of hostiles far more dangerous than anything currently known. Unity and cooperation will be essential for survival." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar to contemplate the complete transformation of galactic politics that had just occurred. The humans hadn't just defeated the hegemony, they had revealed capabilities that made them the dominant military force in the known galaxy, then immediately offered to use that power for collective defense. As human rescue ships began docking with disabled hegemony vessels, the alien crews discovered that their former enemies were providing not just emergency repairs, but also detailed technical data that could improve the performance and safety of their ships. The humans were sharing advanced technology with the species that had come to destroy them. The reports that reached Nexus Prime over the following days painted a picture that forced the galactic community to completely re-evaluate their understanding of what it meant to be human. The species they had dismissed as primitive warriors had revealed themselves to be master strategists, advanced technologists, and natural diplomats. More importantly, they had demonstrated a philosophical approach to conflict that no other galactic species had ever achieved: the ability to completely defeat an enemy while simultaneously offering them a path to alliance and mutual benefit. The Battle of Kepler's Edge had introduced the galaxy to human military capabilities. The engagement at Neutral Zone 77 had demonstrated human tactical superiority. But the aftermath of both conflicts revealed the most dangerous human characteristic of all: their tendency to turn enemies into allies through the simple expedient of treating them with dignity and respect while maintaining absolute superiority in every field of endeavor. As Admiral Cathbar watched human engineers working alongside hegemony crews to repair the disabled fleet, he realized that the galaxy had not been conquered by the humans. It had been offered the opportunity to evolve into something greater than the sum of its parts, with humanity serving as both the catalyst and the guardian of that transformation. The humans had not just examined alien technology and tactics, they had studied galactic civilization itself, identified its weaknesses and limitations, then developed solutions that benefited everyone involved. They were not just warriors or diplomats or scientists. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before: a species capable of improvement through conflict, growth through adversity, and unity through strength. The age of human dominance had not begun with conquest, but with an invitation to join them in building something unprecedented in galactic history: a truly cooperative civilization based on mutual respect, shared benefits, and the recognition that diversity of thought and culture was the galaxy's greatest strength.